الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين مولانا وسيدنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرض أرواحنا له الفداء وعجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Amma ba'du, respected elders, brothers, sisters, mu'mineen, mu'minat. Tonight, although we had scheduled the discussion on du'as, but yesterday's discussion has remained unfinished. So if you allow me, we'll spend some time in the beginning of today to discuss and finalize what our discussion was yesterday, which was regarding the mercy and kindness in the family situation. So if you remember yesterday, we had said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is always merciful to everybody. And this is the manifestation of His name, Rahman. Rahman is merciful to everyone. So in this regard, it doesn't really matter what religion you follow, what kind of lifestyle you have, the mercy of Allah will encompass you. Wa rahmati wasi'at kulla shay. My mercy encompasses everything. Then we discussed that within the family, Allah allows His mercy to manifest in people at different levels. And within the family, it is the women that you'll find manifesting the mercy of Allah more. This is one of the qualities which Allah has given them. The men have been given their own duties and roles. The women have been given their own duties and roles. Allah says in the Quran, which we repeated yesterday, we had said, Ar-rijalu qawwamuna ala nisa. Men have been made to be the managers and maintainers of women. This means that in the family situation, the men have the leadership role. Someone may say, this is unfair, why should men be the leaders? If we had understood this point properly, we would never say this. Because believe me, it is more headache to take this role of leadership than you can imagine. The men who are successfully running their households, meaning that they are discharging their duties, we know how hard it is. It is not a privilege. See, this question gets put a number of times, that in your Islam, why is it that women don't have certain roles which men have? For example, leading of prayers, men lead the prayers. Men are the ones who are put forward for this. We say, do you think this is actually a privilege? Someone who thinks this is a privilege, something is wrong in their mind. This is not a privilege, this is a burden. This is a burden which Allah has given us. We have more accountability for this. When He gives you a responsibility, when He gives you some kind of authority and leadership, this is a burden. This is not something that you crave. This is not something that you should want necessarily. So for example, when someone says lead the prayer, if someone stands up very readily and says, yes, I will lead the prayer, let me lead the prayer, no one else should lead the prayer, only I should lead the prayer, I think something's wrong there. Because you are taking on a huge responsibility and something is wrong. Usually the ulama, when they are told, can you lead the prayers, they usually will ask, is there no one else? Please, if there's someone else, I would rather he shoulders the responsibility. Why should I shoulder the responsibility? My teacher used to say, you pay me millions of dollars a month and tell me to become a judge in the court, I will never become. How will I stand in front of Allah on the Day of Judgment? That I, for some small reason, some factor, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I had a bad mood, I did a harsh decision on someone. Or someone one day in the court, someone smiled at me and I was nice to them. How will I explain this to Allah? This is not something we should be craving. Anyway, my point is, Ar-rijal qawwamuna ala nisa is a burden on the men. At the same time, the rest of the family unit should have an easy time with the men. Don't burden your men too much. It is not fair on them. Men are under a lot of stress as it is. to do the expenses of the house, to meet the demands of the family is no easy thing. The men in the audience will agree with me, I'm sure. How many things do we have going in our head per day? All of the different obligations and the different things that we have to fulfill. All of the things that Allah has given us. All of the different burdens that we have to carry on our shoulders. It's not easy. At the same time, men do not have the right to bully, intimidate and undermine the women. So yesterday's lecture, I hope this point was clear. We are talking about both genders. Both genders have a role to play. Men as maintainers cannot be bullies and cannot be aggressive on the women that they are maintaining. Women as the one who is maintained cannot have such demands and such ways of disrespecting the men that it removes that kind of love of the family from the man. The man will end up saying that, what kind of thing is this? I'm working day and night and all I get is this kind of nonsense. Everyone has to interact together in a lovely, harmonious, beautiful way. That is the only way we will succeed in our families, is if we try to be a little bit more understanding of one another and the stresses we are going through. The mercy of Allah, if it's more in the women, there is a reason behind this. The main role of a mother in the family is to raise righteous children and upbringing of children, to make that house a kind of heaven, to make that house peaceful, to allow softness to enter that house, to allow gentleness to enter the house. If they remain as feminine women, the problem we have is that in today's society we are inundated with this notion that don't treat them any different. The way you treat a man, treat a woman. You cannot. It is against the nature. It is against the way Allah wants it. That doesn't mean discriminate and don't be equal where you can be equal. Of course, we'll always try to treat everyone fairly. But it doesn't mean that exactly what the man does, the woman does. Exactly what the woman does, the man does. This is not the way it was intended. Everyone has a role for a reason, and this is the proper functioning of the family unit. Now, we also said yesterday that mercy in the family goes beyond just the husband and wife. The family now involves children and parents. Let's have a quick discussion on that, although the majority of this I will bring later in the last lecture, inshallah, with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. First of all, mercy in the household, whether it's husband and wife or parents and children or grandparents and grandchildren, whatever it is, you must remember one thing. Mercy is always a two-way street. Mercy is always a two-way street. I want to bring you 3 hadiths from Amirul Mu'mineen to illustrate this. Listen to what Imam says. Listen to what he says and think, how can I implement this in my household and in my family? The first hadith is as follows. Ajibtu. Amirul Mu'mineen says, Ajibtu. I find it very surprising. I find it ajib. Liman yarju rahmatan min fawqihi. That someone can hope in mercy from the one above him, meaning Allah. I find it ajib that someone can hope in mercy from the one above him. كَيْفَ لَا يَرْحَمُ مَنْ دُونَهُ. How then, if he hopes in mercy from God, how can he not show mercy to the one who is younger or smaller than him? You want rahmat from God? You want your life to go in a certain way? You want mercy, kindness, happiness, peace in your heart? You want your business and your work to flourish? You want all these signs of mercy? But you treat your children horribly. You treat, for example, your wife horribly. A mother treats the children horribly. A boss treats his employees horribly. This can be applied to everybody, yeah? All manner of subordinates. all manner of those under you. You treat them badly, but yet you hope that the one above you treats you kindly. How can it happen? How can it happen? Especially when we come to mu'mineen, especially when we come to our fellow believers. How much hurmat has Allah kept in the izzat of a mu'min, the honor of a mu'min? We have one hadith. Aba Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salatu was salam. He was on one occasion, he had done the niyat of i'tikaf. I'tikaf is what? When 3 days you reserve yourself, you make a niyat, 3 days I'm staying in the masjid. Right? 3 days I'm staying in the masjid. He made the niyat of i'tikaf. Usually we don't break i'tikaf. We have to remain. Once you make the niyat, you remain. One man comes and says, Aba Abdullah, I need your help. Imam says, what is it? He says, I'm indebted. I have a debt to pay. Imam says to him, I don't have anything on me right now to give you. I cannot help you in your debt. He says, Aba Abdullah, then do one thing. The man who is after me for my money, the one to whom I am indebted, he's threatening me that if I don't pay him, he will make sure I get arrested and taken away. At least come with your reputation and with your abru, with your honor, you can at least intercede for me with him. At least come and be my guarantor. Aba Abdullah says, yes, okay, let's go. Ibn Abbas, he comes along and says to Imam Hussein, he says, have you forgotten you are in i'tikaf? You cannot leave. Imam replies to him, O Ibn Abbas, I have heard my own grandfather Rasulullah say that one who helps in the need of a mu'min, one who helps in the need of another mu'min, it is as if he gains 9,000 years of ibadat sawab, where every day is in fasting and every night is in ibadat. Mu'min, mu'min, mu'min. Izzat of a mu'min, abaru of a mu'min, hurmat of a mu'min, honor of a mu'min. To help mu'mineen, to try your best and help mu'mineen. This is the Islam we have. What a religion we have. What a religion we have. On one side of the coin it is Haqqullah. On the other side of the coin it is Haqqun Nas. These things go hand in hand. The more Haqqullah you do, you should have more hamdardi with the Haqqun Nas. The more Haqqun Nas you do, you should have more love with Haqqullah. This all goes together in our beautiful religion. Amirul Mu'mineen, second hadith, he says, Man tarham rohim. Very simple. Whoever gives mercy, receives mercy. You want mercy from your kids? You want your kids to treat you well? You want your wife, you want your spouse, you want your husband to treat you well? Give mercy. Somehow Allah will return mercy to you. Even if that person doesn't give mercy to you. Let's say, for example, we say, well, I treat my kids very nicely, but they're bad to me. No problem, that's their problem. That is their issue. They will have to face the consequences on the Day of Judgment. They will have to face what God presents them with when they stand in His court on the Day of Judgment. You will receive mercy from another source, don't worry. Nothing in this world is wasted. Zarra'i neest dar in meikade zaya shabad. There is not a single zarra. Zarra is what? Like an atom, like a particle. There is not a single zarra in this world which is wasted in the eyes of Allah. Either you'll get it here, or you'll get it there, or you'll get it in both places. One who is merciful will receive mercy. Third hadith from our great Imam. Man lam yarham lam yurham. Whoever doesn't do mercy will not be treated with mercy by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want the mercy of Allah, the special mercy of Allah, the rahmat-e rahimiyyah, you want that special mercy of Allah, then be merciful to others. Kama tudinu tudan. Amirul Mu'minin says, what you do, you will get. How you treat others, you will be treated. Whatever you sow, you shall reap. Kama tudinu tudan. Everything in this world has a hisab. Everything has its own calculation. There is not a single deed you do or a thought you bring in your mind other than you will see somehow its response. This is our religion. So mercy is a two-way street. Mercy, as we said, within the family. How to gain this maximum level of mercy? We have discussed a few of the strategies. One more strategy for you with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We said Allah's mercy is 100 parts. One part has been given in this world, and every instance of mercy you see is because of that one part of Allah's mercy which He has sent in this world. 99 reserved for the hereafter. All 100 parts are given to Ahlul Bayt because they have the capacity. Different people will have different capacities. Ahlul Bayt have the maximum capacity. All 100 parts are within Ahlul Bayt. When Allah now wants to distribute this mercy, He uses Ahlul Bayt. He uses the wali of the time, wali-e Khuda in that time. Who is the wali-e Khuda in our time? Imam Zaman, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. Allahumma sallam. So as a family, when you want to receive this mercy of Allah, you need to have a relationship and a bond with Imam Zaman. You need to have a relationship and a bond with Imam Zaman. How to do this? A number of ways. The usual ways I will say first, and then I will tell you a very special way. The usual ways are what? You've heard this before, but I'm just going to do repetition just so that it's in our mind. For example, on waking up in the morning, what do you say? Assalamu alayka ya sahib al-asri wa zaman. Peace be to you, O master of this time. Remember him in the day. Say salawat on his name. Remember him. Pray dua for him. Do salam to him. After your namaz, do the salams to him. Give sadaqah for him, that may Allah keep him safe. Give your a'mal sawab to him. Pray the Quran, for example. You prayed one surah. Say to Allah, this surah I am dedicating for the sawab of Imam Zaman. Does he need sawab? No. You need to keep in contact with him. That's why you do it. You will get the sawab, he'll get the sawab as well. You will get additional sawab because you remembered him. It's a win-win situation. All of these are the normal things. Now I want to tell you one more thing regarding Imam Zaman. You want to have a bond with Imam Zaman? There's one way very special. When you pray your namaz, there is a way to pray your namaz and join it with the namaz of Imam Zaman. Everyone, when we pray namaz, you can be 100% sure that the wali of this time, Imam Zaman, never delays his prayers, correct? There is no way we can ever imagine Imam delay. He's going to always pray right on time. When you pray on time, he is praying on time, his namaz is raising up, your namaz will raise up with his namaz. As his namaz is elevated towards Allah, your namaz somehow gets included through the generosity of God. Your namaz is also taken up with his namaz. Someone may ask a question, but we don't know in which place in this world Imam Zamana is. What if he's in Europe or the western part of the world or another part of the world where the time zones are different? Don't say these kinds of things. Look at the spirit of what we are saying. Don't look at the literal scientific explanations. The spiritual world doesn't follow the laws of physics necessarily. The spirit is when you pray on time, no matter where he is in the world, he is praying on time, spiritually you are connected. Your namaz, Imam Zaman's namaz. your namaz will go up as his namaz goes up. Inshallah, your namaz will be accepted because it's covered within his namaz. To keep that tie and link with the wali of the time will bring so many blessings into your family. Imagine Imam-e-Zaman's kind glance on your household. Imagine Imam-e-Zaman's happiness when he looks at your family. Imagine his reaction when he sees my Shia is praying on time. He's following my sunnat. He's following my practice. I pray on time. My Shia also prays on time. Another way of keeping our families full of mercy with one loud salawat, please. The next way is a way which I don't know if it will work here, Azizan. I don't know if your community will find this conducive, but I'm going to share it with you. Then you'll have to find a way to make it happen. In our lives, we have lots of different places we go to. We go home, we go to work, we go to school, we go to friends' houses, we go different places to do different things. But there is a place where this place is the symbol of spirituality and zikr of Allah and zikr of Ahlul Bayt. That is the masjid, mosque. The masjid is a very special place. The masjid is the place in which, no matter, look, I don't want anyone to say, but the people in the mosque are not nice, and the people who pray namaz have all these bad habits. Please, please, don't say these things. These things are offensive. Whether they're good or bad, work on yourself. Everyone look at themselves. I'm looking at myself. Masjid is sanctified. Masjid has its own noor. Masjid has its own azmat, its greatness. As much as you can, make sure you, your children, your spouse, where it is possible, come to the masjid. Someone may say, I listen online. Good for you. Janab-e Fatima is probably not going to be online, but Janab-e Fatima will be in the masjid. Imam-e-Zaman will be happy that you're listening online. Fair enough. But not like you're in the masjid. This masjid has its own noor. Masjid Imam Bara, same thing. Let me give you a quick example from the life of Allama Tabatabai. Allama Tabatabai, rahmatullah alayh, he was invited every year to a majlis in someone's house. He used to go and participate in the majlis. Not to recite, just to sit and listen. Like most of us, most of the time we go to the majalis to sit and listen. He would be invited, he would go, he would sit and listen. One year, what this family did in their house, they extended the house, right? Whatever reason, the house was small for them, they decided to extend. Allama is invited to come to the majlis, he goes to the majlis. He walks in. Without thinking, he sees a space and he sits down. He happens to sit down in the new part of the house, the extended part. He sits down. After a while, he stands up and he moves to the old part of the house. People are watching him and they ask him, they said, Agha, what happened? You were sitting there, why did you stand up and come over to this side? He says, if I'm not mistaken, that section where I first sat down is the new part, correct? They said, yes, correct. He said, well, in that case, this old part, I would rather sit in this old part because these walls and these windows and these doors have heard the zikr of Imam Hussein. Your new part of the house is still a good part, there's nothing wrong with it, but this is like special. There have been years and years of zikr of Ahlul Bayt in this old part. I said to myself, it's better I sit in that old part. Everything has its sanctity. Everything, mu'min has its sanctity. Masjid has it, Imam Bara has. Everything has its own sanctity. Try in your life to maximize the connection you have with this sanctity. You have an option to pray at home. You have an option to pray in the masjid with a little bit of effort or a lot of effort sometimes. Go for the masjid if you can. Go for it. You will find such noor in your heart. You will find such spirituality coming in your life. The reward of namaz-e-jamaat. The reward of namaz-e-jamaat is how much? There are some things which have so much reward they cannot be counted. One of them is the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salawat is something which cannot be counted, the sawab of salawat. Another thing which cannot be counted. When 10 people are standing in namaz-e-jamaat, 10 people are participating in namaz-e-jamaat, hadith says, jinn and ins, jinnat and human beings together, if they try to count, they cannot calculate the amount of sawab. 10 people. 10 people. Yes, it's a bit of an effort, I agree. Yes, the roads at the moment are very wet, it's very difficult. Believe me, I'm also seeing the same thing. Yes, sometimes parking is an issue. Yes, agreed. If possible, if you can push yourself to that level, participate. You'll find a different level of noor, barakat and mercy in your life, inshallah. Rahmat has two parts. We've discussed this. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Rahmat of Allah has two parts. Rahmat-e-Rahmaniyya, Rahmat-e-Rahimiyya. He is Rahman, He is Rahim. Rahman is His general level of mercy. Everything receives His general level of mercy. Everything has that general level of mercy. But this in itself is no big achievement. This was going to be given to us no matter what. Animals receive the same thing. Dushman of Ahlul Bayt receives the same thing. This is no real attainment. Like, this is not why we were sent. Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah alayhi, he says something very interesting. He says, Fark man wa buz in nist, ke man insanam wa buz insan nist. He says the difference between me and a goat, a buz, a goat, is not that I'm a human being and that's not a human being. The difference between us is really this. Man mitunam insan besham, buz nemitune insan beshe. I have the capacity and potential to become a real human being. A goat doesn't have the capacity and potential to become a human being. Are we human beings? Are we leading human lives? Or would you say we're leading animalistic lives? Because an animal also likes to sleep in a nice place. We also like to sleep in a nice place. An animal also likes to eat good food. We also like to eat good food. Are we leading real lives, human lives? Or is it that we're the same as anything else on this earth? Allah has not made this world as a restaurant. Just come, order the things you like, enjoy yourself, and on you go. No. He has made this world for us to achieve something much greater. Something much more honorable is in store for us. This world is made in the way that we should achieve not just Rahmat-e-Rahmaniyya, but Rahmat-e-Rahimiyya. To taste the true mercy and kindness of Allah. What kind of kindness are we talking about? Very special kindness. I want to tell you something from the lives of our ulama. This is from the history of one of the great ulama of Mashhad, Mirza Habibullah Gulpaygani. An amazing personality. You probably haven't heard much about him, but an amazing personality of his time. Let me tell you about him with one loud salawat. Agha Mirza Habibullah was a great personality of Mashhad. May Allah give us tawfiq to visit Imam Raza alayhi salam. He was a great scholar of Mashhad. Muqaddas. He was so pious. He was so much in love with Imam Riza. His habit was what? Those of you who have been to Mashhad, you know, summers extremely hot, winters extremely cold. His habit was every day for namaz-e-shab. In those days, the haram would be closed. Today, alhamdulillah, mashallah, with the number of mu'mineen and za'ireen which go, the haram is open all night, 24 hours. In those days, they used to close the haram and open it at Fajr time. His practice was, every day he would go and he would recite his namaz-e-shab outside the door of the haram, which was locked. Namaz-e-shab. And then near the Fajr time, the doors would open. And he had this record of being the first Za'ir of Imam Raza every day. First Za'ir of Imam Raza every day. He did this day after day, week after week, month after month, for 40 years. 40 years he had this record. Namaz-e-shab, doors open, go inside, and be the first Za'ir of Imam Raza. He was also the Pesh Imam, the Imam-e-Jamaat of Masjid-e-Gohar Shad. Who knows where Masjid-e-Gohar? You know where it is, right? The blue dome. Underneath the blue dome is Masjid-e-Gohar Shad of Mashhad, in the Haram of Mashhad. He was also the Pesh Imam there. He used to lead the prayers. One day, someone is watching him and they see something very strange. They see that after namaz, there's a line of people. The people who are lining up are all the sick and unwell and diseased and ill people. Lining up. And one by one they come to him and he takes his hand and he puts it on their head, he wipes their head, he wipes their face. And these people, when he does that, they shake and they sweat. And then they are cured. They kind of go through this change and then they seem cured. This guy says, I need to ask what's going on here. How is this happening? So he goes to Agha Mirza Gul Baigani. He says, Agha, what is this that I'm seeing? Tell me. Agha narrates. He says, look, I'll tell you what happened. He says, for 40 years I had this habit of namaz-e-shab, doors open, first Zahir of Imam Raza. At one point in my life, I became ill. I was bedbound. For 1 week, I didn't manage to have the strength. I was so ill. I didn't manage to have the strength to go for namaz-e-shab and go into the haram. For 1 week. In that 1 week, I felt so down, so guilty in myself, so despondent that this good practice of mine has broken. And from my room, because I was like bedbound, just bound to one room basically. From my room one day, my eyes saw the minaret of the Haram of Imam Raza. I said, Agha, Mawla, I'm so sorry. I'm feeling so down. I haven't been able to come for your ziyarat. And with this broken heart, I fell asleep. In my dream, I saw a chair. On the chair, Imam Raza alayhi salam was sitting. And either side of Imam Raza, one side was one khadim, one servant. On the other side was another khadim, another helper or servant. And I was opposite. Imam Rada took a flower. And this flower had the most amazing, fragrant, perfumed smell I'd ever smelled. Imam Raza gave the flower to one of his khadims and said, go and give it to Mirza Habibullah. That khadim walked over to me and gave me the flower. And then I woke up. When I woke up, the first thing I felt is that my whole room was full of that fragrance of the flower which I had smelt in my dream. Second thing I felt is in my hand I had that flower. First thing I did, I took that flower and I wiped it on myself. I wiped it on myself. And immediately I felt better. Then I got ready, I did my wuzu and I went to the haram for ziyarat. I did my ziyarat, paid my respects to Mawla Imam Raza. Then it was near azan time of Maghrib. I went to Gohar Shad Masjid and I led the prayers. I had that flower in my pocket. After my prayers finished, all of a sudden, unexpectedly, a group of ill people started to come towards me. I was surprised. I said, what do you guys want? They said to me, Mirza Habibullah, with the flower given to you by Imam Raza, cure us. That's when I realized Imam Raza came into my dream and gave me the flower. He had also come into their dream and told them, go and get your shifa from the flower I have given to Mirza Habibullah. Ahlul Bayt. Then what I did, I took the flower. I took just one petal of that flower and I began to wipe it on these mareez people, these ill, sick people. And one by one they started to get shifa. Sometime later, I was doing this every day. Sometime later, my hand which had touched that flower and held the flower, now my hand itself, the flower had gone or withered, whatever you want to say. Now my hand itself was enough. And since then, the mareez people, the ill, sick people have been lining up every day because the reputation grows. You get famous. They are lining up every day and this is what you see. That I just put my hand on them and they get shifa. This person then asked a very interesting question. He says, Agha, Imam Raza gave the flower to his khadim to give to you. What would have happened if Imam Raza had given you the flower directly? Mirza Habibullah replied. He says, I have yaqeen. If Imam Raza had given me the flower directly, and if his Mubarak hand would have touched my hand even for a second, I think with my hand I would be able to raise people from the dead. Is there any limit of Allah's power? Is there any limit of Ahlul Bayt's kindness? Is there any limit to what Imam Raza can do? Is there any limit to what Abu Abdullah can do? Our faith, our faith, our faith. Majalis, azadari, namaz, duas, ziyarat. All of this is adding up to making our hearts more merciful and more spiritual. Never, inshallah, we pray to Allah, oh Allah, never cut us off from the rope of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Tonight, Azizan, we have discussed a lot about mercy. Tonight I want to dedicate the Masa'ib to one of the most special but one of the most sad people of the history of Karbala. This was a lady of Ahlul Bayt who mourned, of course, in Karbala, who mourned, of course, in Kufa, who mourned throughout the journey, who grieved in Sham. But her grief lasted until the end of her days. This is the lady known as Janabe Rabab. Rabab, mother of Hazrat Ali Asghar. Rabab is that lady, even after Ashura, after Karbala, Janabe Rabab would never be seen sitting in the shade and shadow. They would tell her, Lady Rabab, sit in the shadow, why do you sit in the sunlight? She says, because I saw my Hussein fall in the sunlight, and I saw the bodies of my beloved ones in the sunlight. I do not want to sit in the sunlight. She would refuse to drink cold water. They would say to her, Lady Rabab, drink some cold water. She says, my beloved ones in Karbala, they never received cold water. I refuse to drink cold water. Aba Abdullah, on the day of Ashura, Aba Abdullah has lost everybody by now. Ali Akbar has fallen. Qasim has fallen. Aun and Muhammad have fallen. All the Ashab had fallen earlier. The last one to remain, Hazrat Abbas, he has fallen. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they say that when Abbas fell, Imam all of a sudden from his look of a young man looked like an old man. His back became bent after Janabe Abbas had been killed. He was heard to say, Al-an in kasarat zahri. Abbas has been killed, my back is broken. I have broken my back now because of Abbas. Then he comes and he is ready now to face his last moments. He looks at the forces of Yazid and he says to them, O forces of Yazid, listen to my last words. They begin to shout and scream and whistle. They say, let's not hear the words of Imam Hussein. They try to drown his words out. Then he begins his last few words. He says, وَهَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرُنَا. Is there anyone in this desert, in this ghurbat, in this strange land of Karbala, is there anyone to come to our help? When he says these words, he hears the wailing and crying of the ladies of Ahlul Bayt. Imam turns back and goes to the tent. He says, what has happened? Why do you wail and cry? They say, Aba Abdullah, since you have said these words of Hal min Nasir, this baby of yours, Aliyun al-Asghar, he has no peace. He is writhing here and there. He will not settle. He needs water. His mother's milk has become dry. Aba Abdullah says, allow me one last try, one last attempt. Maybe there are some kind people in the army of Yazid. Maybe there is someone who has children. When they see my child, they will feel kindness. He takes Janabe Ali Asghar. He takes him in his arms. He takes him to the battlefront. He shows Janabe Ali Asghar to the enemies. He says, O forces of Yazid, if you have a problem, your problem is with me. If you have an enemy, you have an enemy with me. My young son Ali Asghar is 6 months old. He hasn't done anything to anyone. Give some water for my son. Allow him to drink a few drops of water. when they see the beautiful face of Ali Asghar, there are some people in the army, they began to cry. Ali Asghar had touched their hearts. They felt some compassion. They begin to cry themselves that what are we doing? We are starving a baby. We are preventing water from a ma'asum child. Umar Saad realizes that something is wrong here. I need to finish the speech of Hussein. He says, who can do this for me? He goes to his archery expert, the archer of the army, Hurmala. He goes to Hurmala and says, Hurmala, you can hit any target from any distance. Iqta kalam al-Hussein. Do something to stop this speech of Hussein. The army is turning against us. Do something to close the speech of Hussein. Hurmala says, let me select an arrow. Normally, a single pronged arrow is sufficient. He doesn't select a single pronged arrow. He selects the arrow with 3 prongs. These arrows were used to kill the big horses and camels. He selects this arrow and then he puts it to the bow. He takes his aim. 3 times Hurmala drops the arrow. 3 times he puts it up and it drops. He puts it up and it drops. He puts it to the bow and it drops. Umar Saad says, Hurmala, what is the problem? Iqta kalam al-Hussein. Finish the words of Hussein. Hurmala says, oh Umar, every time I put the arrow into the bow, there is a lady behind Hussein. Every time she sees me taking aim, she falls down onto the floor. I think this is Rabab. I think this is the mother of Ali Asghar. Umar Saad says, nothing doing. Take aim and fire. Hurmala puts the arrow into the bow. He takes his aim. Where does he aim, Azizan? Where does he aim? He aims for the most sensitive part of the baby. He aims the arrow into the throat of Aliyun al-Asghar. When that arrow hits Aliyun al-Asghar, it pierces the throat. It also goes through into the arm of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam's speech is cut short. Imam is now left speechless. Imam cannot believe what has just happened. The blood of Ali Asghar begins to flow onto the hands of Aba Abdullah. Aba Abdullah says, oh Allah, this tragedy is only made bearable for me because it is being done in your eyes. You can see what is going on. Imam now has nowhere to go. He has no more words. He doesn't know what to do. He takes the Masoom's blood in his hands. Does he throw it onto the floor? Does he throw it into the skies? He puts that blood onto his blessed beard. But now, Aba Abdullah, you have a much more difficult task. Now you need to show the mother what has happened to her child. Aba Abdullah comes to Rabab. Aba Abdullah looks at Rabab. Rabab, what she must have felt when she sees the throat of Ali Asghar. They both look at the throat. They both cry together. They both go. They take the sword of Imam. They dig a small grave. They lay Ali Asghar down inside the grave. They cover the grave. They water the grave with their tears. They are so much crying over Ali Asghar. They say years afterwards, after Karbala, years afterwards, after Karbala, at the death of Lady Rabab, when she eventually dies and leaves this world, they say Rabab always had a kind of parcel, a package that she would always carry with her wherever she would go. No one knew what is inside this parcel, this package. When she eventually leaves this world, they open this package. What do they see inside? 2 things. Number 1, the earrings of Janab Sakina. Number two, the wood from the cradle of Aliyun al-Asghar. Janab Rabab had carried these things throughout her life. Allah la'natullah al-qawm al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. For the quick zuhur of Agha Imam Zaman, let us have 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.